So, hello and welcome to this Women's Informal Network workshop. It has been quite a while since we organized something online. This is about taking the female allyship to the next level. And we have today as a special guest with us, Dr. Bettina Palazzo, and she will guide us through some tools to identify, first of all, to recognize the subtle discrimination that can happen every day and that is happening. And sometimes maybe we don't realize right away or only afterwards. And so we need to have a sort of toolkit to be able to be prepared to respond promptly. And also there is this formula of no more nice girl. So we will have a special commitment. And yeah, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I am Marilena Heinrich. For those of you who are new here today, I am one of the coordinators of the Women's Informal Network and based in Rome. So something about Bettina, just very quickly. Bettina is the daughter of a mother who was ahead of her times. And so the topic of gender and diversity has always been with her since she was a kid. And in her professional life, she had to learn early how to assert herself. And in the harsh reality of not exactly women-friendly organizations, I guess some of us can also feel the same and have had the same experience. And so for her, much became clearer when she wrote a study on female career obstacles for the German Ministry of Education back in the year 2000. And since then, her experience as an expert in business ethics has been very useful in seeing and approaching diversity from a holistic perspective. So she's running a lot of trainings and workshops, and she was already our guest twice. So this is the good third time. And we have had workshops on communication skills and allyship also with men. And so also today we will discuss how can we bring the men on board and how can they become our allies? How can we market what is in it for them to be our allies? And so without taking any more time, I would like to hand over to you, Bettina, for your introduction and presentation. And so today we will have first the presentation from Bettina, which will be sort of interrupted by a few occasions where you can use the chat room. And so feel free to express your thoughts, share your experiences, your doubts, anything that you would like to share. And then we will also organize a few rounds of breakout groups where you will be divided in groups of 3 people. And we will give you the exact instructions of what needs to be discussed in each group. And it will be randomly assigned. So you will have the opportunity to network with different people at each round. Okay. So Bettina, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you so much for having me again. And thank you for this great introduction. You summarized everything I want to do here today with you so nicely. I couldn't have done it better. Well, also because we kind of co-created the essential parts together yesterday. So let me just jump right into my slides and tell you how I came up with this idea. Is it in, okay. Do I need sound? No, I didn't need sound. And here we go. So recently, during the pandemic and right after, I kind of lost my patience because I realized that, so especially my generation, we really have done our best. We knew, okay, the conditions are not great for having a wonderful career and everything for women. I still remember some of the things that marked me when I was 10 years old. My mom told me that women could not become airplane pilots because once a month they become hormonally insane. And of course, it's complete rubbish, but that's kind of the things that you kind of take with you, and you realize, this might be difficult. Or my dad once said to me, yeah, so what can you do? It's you who have the kids, which is also rubbish. But this is kind of how we started like 20, 30 years ago. And we thought, oh, if we just work hard enough and we do an MBA and we get a PhD, or even get an MBA and get a PhD and not Spanish, and learn how to dress for success, and learn how men communicate in their status kind of way, then we can make it. Yeah. The reality, and this is why I keep referring to the study I wrote 20 years ago, because I could more or less publish her again today with some minor adjustments. So there are still, the care work is done to 75% by women. There are still more people called Thomas than female CEOs in the world. So, and we just worked very, very hard. So people, women, are a little bit tired. Yeah, so we are tired, and we see we did not get far enough and enough for all the hard work we have put in. And the big question is, of course, why is it so hard, and what's keeping? Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint. Also because that's what the most important learning from my study 20 years ago was, it's so hard to create change because it's a complex, it's a wicked problem. So you have all kinds of levels. You have women that sometimes are not assertive enough because they were educated in a certain way, and but here we made great progress. I think women worked really, really hard on themselves. Then we have organizations, and they are basically built around men, all kinds of little elements, from career paths to timing of meetings, the way networking works, and many, many other things. And finally, society, where it is hard as a woman to meet expectations. If you are successful, it can happen that you are less likable. If you have children, it's always difficult to find childcare. So all these many, many different obstacles create something like, that's why it's often invisible, because this kind of glass ceiling, well, it's out of glass, is also different depending from where you work, in what country you live, and what kind of mother-in-law you have, even in some cases, right? So, and so one thing what is still keeping us back are little things, yeah, microaggressions, the sense that we don't really belong, which is sometimes not very motivating. Why should I bring the best of myself to work if I still kind of feel I'm just not one of the boys, right? I remember that early in my career, I often had this feeling, because I was working at KPMG, a big auditing firm, which is very, very male focused. So, then I found this amazing study where they tested with a computer simulation what happens if you have a 50-50 male-female entry level in a fictitious organization, and you consistently under-evaluate the performance of women by 3%. So you might think, oh, well, 3%, well, that's kind of the happy story, right? Because in some worst scenarios, it's really more than 3%, and then you have other things like sexual harassment on top. But they just concentrated on consistently 3% less favorable evaluation. And then, of course, as the women go up, there were less and less women. It was harder for them. And the women who spoke up on this, they were also punished. So that was the setup for the study. And they wanted to find out what happens, how many women make it to the top if after 10 years and 8 hierarchical levels, Yeah, what happened? So I let you guess, and you can write in the chat. So what do you think? What happened to the 50-50 ratio on the last level, on hierarchy level 8? How many? What's the percentage of women that made it to the top? Yeah, can you see some? Can I see the chat? Yeah, so we have 10 to 90. Yeah. That's already a quite pessimistic guess. 50. Yeah, we're getting closer. So I'm revealing, yeah. So it is a staggering 2%. So now you don't have any more questions for the situation we are in, because, as I said, the 3% is already quite optimistic. And we can really see that this is the compound effect of subtle discrimination, because it's hard to put your foot down and say, oh, I've been again undervaluated by 3%, and they would say, they will find all kinds that also the people who give you that evaluation, and this can be men and women, because also women, the patriarchy is in all of us, underestimate other women and tends to evaluate men as higher. So it's very hard to prove, well, I've been under evaluated by 3%, and the other side can always find excuses why the 3% are justified. So that's why it's so hard to fight against this. And this can be explained by a quote that, look and behold, is also already quite dated, from 93, when this was already known how subtle discrimination worked. And I want to read this quote to you. Typically, when one form of prejudices, such as sexism or racism, is labeled as unacceptable, it does not simply vanish. Rather, it tends to take increasingly subtler forms, thus protecting the prejudiced person from both social and legal accusations. So this kind of sums it up very, very nicely, that in our heads, it is still there, but you can't openly say again, well, why do you work? You shouldn't stay home. You should stay home with your kids. This is no longer acceptable. But since the mindset is still kind of there, it finds a way to act out. And all these things, they start small, especially in sexual harassment. It doesn't start with heavy harassment, but it's small things that, because it's a power game, they try, where are your limits? And if you don't insist on your limits in a way that doesn't escalate the confrontation, then it will just keep going. So that's why we have to find ways to fight this without creating our next favorite enemy. So how can we do this? So in general, what we are looking at today is that women done a lot to adjust to the male environment, but the environment is just still not made for us. So it's absurd that we have these also many diversity, gender equality programs in organizations are in this mindset. Also, how can we fix the women? How can we encourage them and give them this and that? But I think what's her name? Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, we don't want any favors from our male partners. We just want them to take the foot off our neck. That's also a pretty powerful sentence. So how can we move away from this fixing the women approach to fixing the environment? And here I think at the moment we are at a crossroads, because things are moving, and we also see more and more backlash. There was this week a study from Sweden that said that young men now are very scared because they think they might not have a chance to get into leadership positions because women will be favored, and they say, oh, it's not my fault that my former generation discriminated women. I want to have a fair chance as well. So we see this. That's why we also need to talk about how can we get show men that it's not a win-lose situation for them. So that's why I decided, okay, so here we are, at the moment we are stuck. So we tried to be the nice girls, we adapted, we worked really hard. But if we want to proceed now, we need to stop, we need to get to a next level on, in a sort of a feminist fight club, I sometimes call it, and there's also a great book with that title. So what I suggest for this new strategy of letting go of being the nice girl and doing everything that's in the corporate or in the organizational playbook, which hasn't brought us the results that we think we deserve, of course. So here is my suggestion, and we will I will show you more details about it, and we will also work together in breakout rooms to get your input, what you can do in these 3 strategies. So the first thing is allyship. So we need, for all these things, for the little discriminations, we need to help each other out, because often we don't share these stories. So that's why it's for every one of us the first rodeo. But if we share how we can deal with these things successfully, and also speak up for other women, because sometimes it's easier if you do it for somebody else than for yourself, right? So that's the first part of the strategy. The second is activism. We should, I know it's tricky if you point your finger at something that's sexist in your everyday work situation. You get easily labeled as the uncomfortable, humorless, bitchy person. But I will also show you some strategies how to do this in a good, curious way. And the motto here is get curious, not furious. And if you don't ask the comfortable question, always play along, we just won't create the change that we really, really need now. And then the last part of my 3-part No More Nice Girls strategy is that every one of us, it's a kind of like a grassroots thing that you are already doing here, but maybe we can find some more tools and actions that every one of us can do wherever they are in the organization. So if you're in hiring, you can look at the hiring process from a diversity, gender equality point of view, or in promoting, or in finance, in communication. How does your organization communicate? Is it characterized by male language, or is so how does that come across in the public, the way your organization communicates? So let's dive a little bit deeper in there. For the allyship, if you participated in my workshop, you're already a black belt in this, hopefully. So how can we help other women? So the most important thing for me is that we share and that we are more solidary. And that's sometimes difficult. I remember one of the times when I was sexually harassed, my female colleague told me afterwards that it was my fault because I was a victim. So that's something we really, really need to stop. And I will say some more about where this comes from in a minute. So sharing our learnings is super important here. That's why I run my communication Aikido for fearless women workshops, where I show how can we prepare for sexist comments and harassment. How can we stay calm, because these kinds of attacks are difficult to deal with if you are in this sudden adrenaline rush, and you're either in fight or in flight mode, and you leash out, or you play the victim, and that's something we don't want. And there are techniques to avoid this. And one of the techniques I'm a big fan of is scripting, that you have ready-made sentences there, that whatever comes, and it doesn't even have to make sense to the inappropriate comment someone says. Whatever it is, you can always say things like, can we focus on work, please? And then you add the icy stare and you go over to your wonderful and successful life, because you don't want an escalation here, but you want to put your foot down and play it cool. Or you can say, let's keep this professional if somebody makes a comment on the way you look today. And then don't give a big talk. That's one of the things we know from psycholinguistics, that if we are excited, and women tend to give all kinds of justification why the other side shouldn't do that. And that doesn't work with men. They don't even hear you anymore. Just give them a sound bite, look them at the icy stare. Yeah, you can even kind of put your head like this, like you have horns. And then you look away and go to the next topic you need to discuss in that meeting. And so why is it that what every time what I hear when I talk about these topics is that, oh, but women can also be so mean. And it is true and it's not true. There is research that shows that the mean girl story is actually a myth. And it is, of course, taken over by men and women to say, oh, but it's not the men that are the bad guys here. But it also comes from the general mindset in patriarchy that gives women the idea there can be only one, the cool girl, the one that has the right to play with the boys. Yeah, and that's why I have this, I have a Strumpet here. Does everybody know them? And the amazing thing is every one of the other Strumpfs has a talent. So there's the judge Strumpf, and there is the gardening Strumpf and whatever. But the only talent that Schlumpfine, I don't know, Strumpfet has is she's pretty. And she's the only one. So that's kind of the myth that gets perpetrated also in our organizations, that people actually tell you, but we already have a woman there. Which is kind of, nobody says you, well, we already, if you twist it around and say, but we already have one man in that group, everybody would just fall over laughing. And for the German speakers in our group, I can highly recommend the book by Caroline Kegebus, Es kann nur eine geben. Unfortunately, it's only in German. And I recommend it also as the audiobook because Caroline is a comedian. And I just couldn't stop giggling when I heard that book because she imitates dialect, and it's very a lot of fun. And she explains very well where all of this comes from, this myth that women have to fight for the place in the sun, and there's just not enough space for all of us. And just we have to stop believing this and perpetrating this. So the mean thing that we are in this competition trap amongst women doesn't come from women because we're genetically jealous or something, but it's part of patriarchy, and we have a choice there. Mm-hmm. So how can we do this, the allyship thing? And I have, of course, you know me, I always have stories to illustrate my point. So let's imagine the following situation. Karen just came back from a successful meeting with the client and tells our team with enthusiasm how well she managed the negotiation. Our colleague Marco says, no wonder you convinced them when you wear that sexy dress. And everybody laughs. So let's hear some chat comments, or since we're only 19, you can also maybe unmute. Would that be okay, Marilena?
Yes,
what
please.
Would you do? Yeah, what would you do? So you are Karen's colleague and you want to be her ally in this situation. What could you say without turning Marcus into your next best enemy?
So feel free to turn on your camera, raise your hand, or write in the chat. How would you react to such a comment? No wonder you convinced them when you wear that sexy dress. Everyone's frozen, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what we need to fight.
Exactly. We need to be ready.
And this
shows how hard it is. We don't even have the comments ready. We have to like think about what would we say, because the
And the thing is, for these kind of situations to be effective, you have 3 seconds to intervene. After that, it's gone.
To be honest, I think what I would do is I would own it. I mean, it's been a while since I've had a sexy dress, to be honest, but I would just I would own it. I would say, but I would add on to it. I would say, yeah, a great dress, you know, I would just sort of say something like, yeah, I know, you know, I'm very, you know, I had a good argument, I'm very convincing, and I have a sexy dress. So I would own it.
Great point. And you could even say, to make it even more light, you should try it too sometimes. Yeah, put on a sexy dress.
Hey, makes sense.
And some high heels also. Yes, please.
Yeah. For me, I was like, I would have looked at him and kind of say, of course, yes, I convinced them. But I think I would have had a certain look at them. I don't know.
Yeah, but you see, it's not easy, and it has to come naturally and without being excited. Yeah, that's a big challenge. So I had some options here. What you could do, you could be quite upfront.
Oh, sorry,
say,
Bettina,
yes.
sorry, we had some comments in the chat as well.
Okay.
Laura said, I'm sure Karen used more professional tools.
Oh, yeah, good.
So someone could comment like that. Or Rosalud said, did you not notice how I performed? And Anne said, we could say, if that's all that it takes, you should also put the sexy dress on next time.
Yeah,
all very good points.
Good yeah. Love it. Yes. Wonderful. So you see, if you have a moment to think about it, you come up with brilliant ideas. The thing is, only once the stress hits your brain, our brain gets hitchhiked by the amygdala, which is our alarm system, and then our neocortex, where all these smart ideas are, is just knocked out. That's the problem. So I have some other suggestions. So say this is a sexist remark and not funny. Of course, if you know Marcus really well, you can say this, but of course it's calling him out, and blame rarely creates change. So it depends how you say it. If you say it with a smile, maybe, but of course that's a risky strategy. And you don't want to lose him. My ideal in this communication Aikido is that we put our foot down so Marcus understands, oops, I won't do this ever again. And even tell him how to do it better. Yeah, so that we get him on board and not disgusted with women for the rest of his life. What else can we say?
So Bettina, in fact, related to that, Daniela Milic just commented and says, the challenge here is to choose. Do we put the spotlight on him and basically feed his ego, or turn to Karen and say something to uplift her? And that's our own decision, right?
Yeah, that's a very good idea. That we also know this from active bystander intervention, is that you can freeze out the aggressor and just support the target person and say, oh, Karen, I'm so proud of you. And then everybody has forgotten about the comment with the dress and just say, how did you do it? What was your argument? What do you think was the most important negotiation technique you used? That's a brilliant, that's very good. Thank you so much.
And Annika is suggesting to use her mimic. She says that she usually stares them down with raised eyebrows.
Yeah. Of course, non-verbal communication, if they get it, because men can sometimes not be the most sensitive in non-verbal communication. But that's always, silence is your friend. That's always an option if you don't have a sentence ready, or you can even make some sound like oops or that. Ouch, whatever, hoppala. So it's just to kind of mark this was not very a good idea to say that. Or you can say, Marcus, don't be jealous, and smile. Yeah, so that kind of puts him back in place. Or you could, if it's a notorious and Marcus keeps doing this, it might be an idea to escalate to your boss. Yeah, that's also an option. It depends how bad it is. Or you can say, Marcus, I guess you always get your deals because you wear these tight-fitting shirts. So that would be a different twist on the why don't you wear dresses yourself thing. Yeah, so you see.
There is one more suggestion, Bettina, from Chitra.
Yeah.
She suggests that we could say, all kidding aside, we are all so impressed with your negotiation skills. And bringing it more towards the professional aspect.
I like it very much. Yeah, so I think that's, so thinking about it, I think that's almost my favorite strategy here. And you found it, you see, just like this, that uplifting Karen, and then nobody thinks about Marcus anymore. Very good, I'm happy. So, and what can you do? Well, one, to take this technique to the next level, it's also helpful. Why not start a little notebook while you write these things down? Situations you already had, situations you heard from somebody else, and just relive them, because then for your brain it's the same thing, and feel the same. If you don't wake up in the middle of the night after a week and think, oh, I should have said that, and then you beat yourself up because you didn't say that. Don't do this, just relive it again. Imagine what had happened if you had come up with this brilliant idea, and try to, that your brain remembers this wonderful feeling of triumph and calm and satisfaction, because that will stick to your brain and that will make it easier for you to remember. And when I remember, when and also exchange with other women, that's why Marilena and I had this idea. We could even institutionalize this with a special Slack channel dedicated to these situations and clever defense strategies.
Actually, I already created it.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
I already created the channel, and my plan is to collect all your responses that you're providing tonight and put them in there. So we could have, for various themes, ready to use short sentences or reactions that we can sort of have a look at and rehearse in front of the mirror, so that they come automatically when we are in such a situation where normally we would otherwise freeze.
Yeah, so like a database.
Yeah.
I think that's really exciting. Ollie, and you've also started a private LinkedIn group, and you find the link here that you can also join. So that's kind of starting, because I don't have an organization around me. So my idea is that I collect all the participants from my workshops there, so we can also create this kind of support community about clever defense strategies, and also just sharing what kind of situations can happen to you, because especially the young women, if I think about my students at the university, they're completely unprepared. They have no idea what will happen, what can happen to them. And I want to protect them, because we know it's especially at the beginning of your career where you're the most vulnerable for these kinds of experiences. So it's even a responsibility for us older warrior princesses to prepare the next generation. Yes. So, and with this, so now we heard a bit about the first No More Nice Girls strategy, and we will send you into breakout rooms now, where you can discuss the following questions, and Marilena will also put them in the chat, so you have them handy in your breakout rooms. And we want you to discuss, so if you'd already acted as an ally, if that worked, what didn't work, what would you do next, better next time or different? And if you not yet acted as an ally, what kept you stuck? What kind of actions would you like to do, and would help you to do it? These are just suggestions of questions. If you only manage in the next 10 minutes to the first questions, that's no problem. And after this, we will debrief this, and we can share your insights from the breakout rooms in the plenary.
Thank you, Bettina.
Okay.
So I will create the breakout groups with 3 people. You will have 10 minutes time for each one of you to share. And here the focus, as you can see from the questions, I've put them in the chat, is on allyship. Okay. Have you had this experience where you consciously acted as an ally, or maybe not, and you would have liked to? What was the barrier, or what was the problem that hindered you? So if anyone needs to leave, yes, I can see a few people are leaving. That's okay. Better now than later, because otherwise the groups are not going to be like equal groups. But I hope that not too many of you will be leaving us. So I will create now the breakout groups, and then I will let you know before the 10 minutes are over. A few minutes before that, I will let you know so that you can wrap up your discussion. Okay. So I'm going to create 6 breakout rooms. Some will be with more than 3, I believe. Yeah. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. No, it's perfectly all 3. Okay. So I have opened the rooms. You should have a message that says that you can join the breakout group, and you just go ahead. Okay, so we're back from our breakout rooms. I hope you had a chance to all share some of the good experiences you have in showing that you are an ally to someone else, another woman. Is there someone that would like to share in plenary? Something that you have heard or something that you have shared yourself? We have a few minutes to exchange here in plenary. Was there something that you got inspired by, that you heard from someone? Something that we could all do? Yes, Chitra. Chitra is the founder of the Women's Informal Network. Hi, Chitra, over to you.
Hi, good. No, thanks for organizing. And it's just great to see everyone. I must say, it's been a while and it's really nice because we've been doing more face-to-face and other things. So it's great to see everyone. I'll just share sort of in our group. So we were talking about one aspect is sort of your experience at different ages, shall we say? So, so some of us are older and we said, well, recently we don't get so much sexist remarks directed towards us or around us. And that could be because we're quite well established in our organization. So people wouldn't make such comments knowing who we are, right? They would be careful about that. But in any case, we had sort of a couple of interesting comments. And so one colleague who is younger than the other two. She was saying how she's had that experience of being either, stared at uncomfortably, etc. And she's been very brave to tell her supervisor, please, if I'm not needed to be in that meeting with that person, please do not invite me because I do not feel comfortable in how he behaves towards me. And so I was also sharing, and it's a good allyship. So now that I'm sort of a matron, and I have my team members who are younger women often. And so I had a situation where, unfortunately, it was sort of an ambassador we were meeting with, and this ambassador, was showing he was very attracted to my supervisee and sort of sat next to her, stared at her throughout the meeting, etc. And so, at the time we just had to tolerate that. But at the end of the meeting, we got up and we were leaving and, just saying our goodbyes. And suddenly he wanted to say how, he made a comment about how I don't, what the typical, in a job, gender shouldn't matter in a job interview, what you really need are the best candidates. And so at that moment, I said, I was just fed up really. And so I said, oh yes, I completely agree with you. And fortunately at EFAT, all the women are the best candidates. And so then he was, and then he's like, oh yes, I agree. And then he went on to talk about his daughters and their accomplishments, etc. And I'm like, wonderful. But in any case, so that was sort of, but just to say, I guess, anyway, we have different ages, different roles. So certainly at this point in my career in life, I'm just fed up and I'm not taking it anymore. And so, and I see a strong role to sort of also look out for our younger colleagues who may be facing this more. And so I always make it a point in meetings as well to sort of, when a younger female colleague makes a good point, to echo her comment so that it is heard. Yeah, so I'll stop there. So great seeing everyone.
Thank you very much, Chitra. I think you had some very important points and action points indeed, to echo what someone is saying. And an easy one is, yes, and acknowledging what our colleague has said and then building on top of what she has said, for example. Yeah. And yeah. Okay, so back to you, Bettina, to continue.
Yes. Okay. And I just wanted to share also a situation where I wasn't an ally, just to show you that can be hard. So And plus I was young. But when I was working in academia, I had this strange encounter with a professor who wanted to offer me a better paid job if I would become his mistress. And then, so I said, thank you, no, thank you. But then the next week, my female colleague came into the kitchen at my research institute and said, oh, Professor X wants to go to dinner with me and talk about job opportunities. And I didn't tell her, because she was in this institute, it was really that way, that she was there before me, and we were pushed in this kind of catfight female competition situation, which I never wanted, but what can you do? And I couldn't know that the professor would do the same thing with her. I wouldn't do this again, but you see, this is how it works. This is how we are pitted against each other. We need to stop this. Yeah. All right, so let's see what our next strategy is. Activism. So speaking up if subtle sexism is happening, because if we don't speak up, well, usually the men will not notice it. So this starts already when you choose your future employees, and I always tell this my students, so look at your employees well. Yeah, if you go to a macho organization, it comes with a price. So check out, do they do something for equal pay? How many women are in the leadership? Is the turnover of female leaders high, which is actually an indicator for toxic culture, because women are more sensitive. They just leave earlier than men who have different reasons for putting up with a bad culture. You can also look at websites. So what are the pictures? Do you see only men? What is the language? Is it a kind of a male talk? There are even companies that can screen your text to see how gendered is the text. Is it a male or is it a balanced text? Yeah, if you always talk about hard work and competition and excellence, that also already in job announcements that can put off women to even present themselves for this job. And why not ask some gender specific questions in a job interview? At the moment, organizations are looking for good people, and why not use this new power that is there? If we don't ask for these things, then they will not know that this is important to get the good talent, right? So let's see how we can do this in real time when you are in an organization and you're confronted with a subtle sexism situation like this one. I'm part of a recruitment team. After an interview with a very promising young woman, one of my male colleagues says that he did not like the woman because she was showing off her achievements too much. So you know the game already. So what can you do to point out that this is a sexist remark and be an ally for that woman? Any ideas?
Any ideas? Either speak up. We're so few that we can, you can just also speak up, or put it in the chat, whatever you prefer.
Yeah.
I had a discussion with a friend this morning about sexist comments, and she suggested something that I actually liked very much. And that would be to say, I didn't get your point very well. Can you explain further what you mean to a sexist comment? Because probably the man doesn't realize, no, like you were saying, Bettina, that it's a sexist comment what he's making, and when he has to then explain it further, maybe he realizes. So that could be one.
Yeah, that also makes strategy. It awkward for them, because they might just say something just to kick off the power game. But if you then pretend like, if you force them to justify their statement, they might realize, oops,
So Annie has a comment, and she says, we could say, yes, she does have amazing achievements. Or Chitra says, well, this is an interview and we need her to tell us her achievements. Right. I don't see the problem.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so playing dumb is a very good strategy here. So what's the problem in this situation? The problem is that off. Okay, back again. Yeah. So without, it's unconscious, so that they don't realize that actually if it's a different story, if a woman talks about her achievements than a man. And there's a famous case study about it where they give students the identical CV of a real female Silicon Valley entrepreneur. What was her name? Heidi. Yeah, Heidi. And they give the same CV with just Harold. They just changed the word. So Heidi and Harold. And then they ask them, so how competent is Heidi? How competent is Harold? And would you like, how likable is Heidi? How likable is Harold? Would you like to work with her, with him? And it's always the same, that men and women would prefer, they say, okay, very competent, but they don't like Heidi and they don't want to work with her, want to work with Harold. This is where this research comes from. And so what can you say? You can say, playing dumb, like interesting. What makes you say that? Isn't talking about your strength expected in an interview. So that's a lot of what Chitra said, more or less. And the kind of mantra to keep in your mind for this kind of reaction is don't get furious, get curious. So just ask them questions and it will become awkward for them. And and you are untouchable. That's a great thing, because you're so nice and you're super interested in their opinion, and they will just feel it. It will be super uncomfortable for them. Very powerful is also the twisted to tested method. If you say, so now imagine a man would have said the same thing, would you still not like him? And you can even tell them about the scientific research on Harold and Heidi. Yes, so kill them with scientific facts is also quite effective, but of course you need to know about this research first to use it strategically. So I have something from Annika here. Women are often seen as bragging, even exaggerating. I've recently seen it when being on an interview panel for a junior position. It also comes from other women. Yes, exactly, because the patriarchy is in all of us. We are not immune against this just because women. So the UN offers a course for people in interview panels and about conscious bias based on gender, and training also only women usually. Yeah, that's not the idea. So there's lots of good work out there how you can get bias out of interviewing. One thing is that you define a clear list of skills and competencies and qualities that you seek in a candidate. So you can, and then you say, so Marilena has it, but Carl doesn't have it, because then you afterwards, if it's just on gut feeling, then the conscious bias will win. But if you have a clear structure, these are the things that we are looking at the candidate, and we look at it, each person, if they have it, then it's much harder to do this kind of hidden discrimination. Noah, you want
Bettina, Noah is raising her hand, and she is actually an HR expert. So let's hear from Noah.
Hi. So it's just, I love this, but I had an experience in this a couple of times. So I'll say one of them is like, we had also an interview, and the highest one with a female. And when we came to the end of it and we were discussing, two of the panel members with a male, it's like said, no, we're not hiring her because she is old. I was like, okay, what do you mean she's old? We did not specify any age limitation, and so you cannot say on that basis. Then he tried to find another thing, you know? So you have to know how to just basically go around go around whatever they come up with scientific facts, right? For me, it was, I am guided by certain principles in HR. So I managed somewhat to get this one on board, despite of was a furious discussion. And I was actually going off my head because I saw that this is just a patriarchal stuff, right? The male did not want a female because she was successful.
That's how it works.
Yeah, so I stood up to it and I said, you know what, if you insist, I'm gonna raise it to the highest level. So they kind of went ahead with what I said.
Very good. So not giving in too quickly, and it's clear that they probably didn't even realize themselves on a conscious level that it was because they had a problem with the female part. They for them, they were convinced it's about age, even though they would probably not even think about age in a man. Yeah.
No, and they wanted actually to select the second, who was a male, who was only 3 years basically younger than her. So there's no justification for that if we look at it only from the age-wise. But
it's an excuse, but that's why you really need clear criteria before to anticipate this kind. So
exactly,
So Chitra says that the same happened in IFAD. Unfortunately, female allies supported the candidacy of a woman, and she was ultimately selected. And statistics are very powerful, especially when speaking with men. And perhaps we need to add that to the Slack. Good facts to use. So that's a very good point by Chitra. Thank you.
Statistics
that we can use. And
numbers.
Shasha, I saw you had your hand raised. Shasha.
Oh, thank you so much, Marhalden. I think I just want to echo what Nuha just mentioned, but it's really a personal experiences. It's very still fresh and recent. So I was actually in an interview, and I was one of the candidates who reached to the interview stage. And I think after the whole process was done, so it was usually, once the entire process is done, you usually can really reach out to the previous panel members to get some feedback, for example, right, to see how to improve in the future. And one of the feedback I got, they talk about the age. They talk about my age vis-a-vis with the other candidates, the other potential candidates, and then they say, you were the youngest among the candidates, and etc. So I really had the feeling of how to. Oh, of course, eventually with with a good, balanced, unbiased panel, they eventually still, proceed as based on the performance of the interview or the written test. But I just feel like, you can imagine in an international organization environment, at certain stage with the senior officers, aging, especially about the women candidates, still can be a very, sensitive, eye-catching element when they talk about, selections and decisions, etc., etc.
And you see that they bend it in every direction. Either you're too old or too young. I mean, when is the right age for a woman? So maybe you have a golden time when you're like 40 and you might not get pregnant again, but you're not too old yet. I mean, really. And it never happens to men, of course.
Yeah, and Bettina, Annika made a very important point, because it very often happens that as women, we get stuck at a certain level for a number of years. And so she says that she has seen that as well with older women, with an older woman who applied for a P3 job and had been a P2 for 14 years.
Wow.
She was the best applicant, but the men on the panel were like, okay, there must be a reason why she was stuck for so long. She must be bad. And that obviously is then even more painful, no? If for whatever reason you have been stuck at a certain level and then you get a comment like that. So Chitra, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, no, thanks. I love how you narrate our comments. It's so lively. But I just want to, on the ageism front, I do think that for women, it's a bit more, especially, if you're, when you're younger, you're too young, when you're old, you're too old, etc. But I do think men also face that to some extent. So this is, I think, I just wanted to highlight that, just because I've heard some younger men, right? They grow beards to look older, right? and then older men, like my brother, he was saying, I'm trying to decide whether to be fat or look young. I decided to go go, because when you're fatter, you look younger, and he's older now, right? He's in his 50s. So it's like, I'm going to go for looking young, because that, at that age, it's better to look young and fat than thin and old. So I think we're all struggling. We all struggle with these things. And so maybe that's something, as, again, to the HR, it's great that, like, if we're like, as Nuha, as an HR officer, that you really enforce. And if for any of us who are on an interview panel, that we say, well, really enforce these rules of, well, I didn't realize age was one of the criteria, and what's really important isn't like their age, but the number of years of experience. Do they have that? They did. We shortlisted them. So I don't think this point is moot. Let's move on. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's good to be aware of this. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so we need to move on a little bit. What else can you do as a female warrior in the organizational world? So here I found a very inspiring the example of Nadia Calvino, the Spanish Minister of Economy, who had sworn at a female conference that she will never again be on a photo, an official photo where she will be the only woman. And we see her no, we can see it still on her lips, where she is at a manager's conference, and she said, I won't be on this picture. And she also said that she will no longer be part of a panel where she will be the only woman. And I think that that's an important message on a symbolic level, so that senior women like her don't play the alibi woman anymore. So that's I think is, but because I think, but we had one woman. This is not it. We need at least 30%, but preferably 50. And this is the tricky part, where also Marilena and Ivy are kind of not so advanced. How can we get the men on board? So what is in it for them? And the thing is, usually also men enjoy working in mixed teams more, because if you are in this testosterone intoxication meeting where everybody's just showing off and you never get to the point, and it's just the power struggle and showing off how wonderful you are and trying to get the intention of Mr. One is just not very promising for the 21st century, and it's not fun for nobody. Usually also men want more balance. They could have more time for family if there would be more female leaders. We would all have more innovation and less stress. And the patriarchy is also quite risky and dangerous for men. They are higher in suicide. They die earlier because they don't take care of their health. The people, 50% of the people that die of skin cancer are men, because they just don't go to the doctor when they should treat it. So completely unnecessary. Or 80% of people that drown are men, because they overestimate their swimming skills, they don't cry for help, and they take too many risks. So it's a burden for them, but they only see kind of the privilege. And they're fighting for this. They just don't know what will come next. That life could be healthier and less stressful for them. But that's, of course, difficult to explain in a business, in an organizational, professional context. So if you have great ideas, I would be very happy.
Any ideas on how we can get men on board? Chitra, you were mentioning statistics. I think that's a very good point. If we come up with the statistics of having gender balanced teams and how much more productive they show to be, that could be one convincing factor. But have you perhaps experienced some convincing factors for men, or what could we use?
I can break the ice as always while others are thinking, but but Rosalud, so let her go.
Rosalud, okay, and then afterwards Chitra.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Just wanted to say that it's very, very difficult to convince men, but you can really look out for champions.
Yeah.
There are men champions, and once you spot them, you have to get them. And I've been with the women's movement, and it's really tough to get. I mean, the convincing part is one thing, but that takes time. But there are really a lot of champions now that you can spot and get them on board.
Yeah.
That's like the easy way.
Yeah.
Over.
Yeah. Annika says the same thing, that also men suffer under toxic masculinity. So we need to find them and also give them the tool, because also for them, it's not easy to speak up and be an ally and do it in a way that they're not seen as the male traitors. That's scary. I mean, they mostly get raised with the idea, oh, you have to avoid at all costs to seem vulnerable or feminine. Yeah. Okay.
Chitra, what was your point that you wanted to add, please?
Well, yeah, no, I was just because sometimes I think we're seeing, as Claire had said, she's seeing it less and less. And I think among younger men, I find, much more men who are interested in really being, taking care of their child, for example, taking a genuine paternity leave. And so I think we have a natural ally in younger men that we should also build on. So that's one. And then the other, I mean, that said, I mean, I think we just have to talk, as was said earlier, like talk about experiences, share statistics, and then share the experiences that you've gone through. And it's just so important, because unfortunately there are a lot of these, YouTube videos that are very anti-woman nowadays. This Jordan Peterson is one of them, and so sometimes my son will say things like that, and so I'll have to talk to him first with statistics, but then I'll also, because he can then become a bit combative about statistics and like questioning them, and then I'm like, well, this is my experience and this is what I went through. And I know many people who have gone through this. Like the gender pay gap is one where they're like, oh, well, that's because women, they don't work enough. And and it's like, no, that is not why. And so you really have to know your facts, again, back to the facts, and the experiences that you go through. And we need to tell, like Bettina's, your story about being offered a job to become a mistress. We need to say that more. We have to share stories, exactly, because otherwise people think, oh no, it's not. No, it's true. These things happen. The other day I bumped into a colleague and she told me how unfortunately an HR person said to her husband, she was told her husband works at the same organization. It's like, you're never going to get promoted as long as he's here. And she even had in an interview said, well, who's going to take care of the kids? Because your husband's so like busy. It's like irrelevant again. So, but the more we hear that this is happening, the more we have ammunition, right? To say there is a problem, the problem still exists, and we need to change people's minds. And the other thing is I'm finding like also, it depends on the men. So it's not really a male thing, but it's just attitudes of certain people. Because a lot of men who have wives who work, I find them great. They understand because they see what their wives or their daughters or whatever are going through. I often find single women, unfortunately, that's like the heart, like they've succeeded and they're the ones who are like, oh, I didn't need anything. I believe in gender blindness, and I have a hard time with them often.
Yeah. I also had this experience when I was writing about the mother penalty. Then I got backlash from single women and said I was discriminating single women, childless women. I don't get this, but it doesn't matter. You get discriminated as a single woman, childless woman, as well as a mother, but which can be a next level of discrimination, of course. So let's go back into the breakout rooms one more time. So here again, the same idea. When did you already speak up against sexism? We already had some stories here, what worked, what didn't work. If you haven't acted as an activist yet, what kept you stuck? It's sometimes hard, it's scary, you might not have the right words. So please exchange on this again. For Marilena, you are the queen of the time management. We have been talking a lot, so.
Yes, so again, we have 10 minutes
yeah.
for this one. And I have created 5 groups. One is of 4 people and all the others are of 3. I'm opening all the rooms now.
Okay, great.
And I've put the questions again in the chat.
Thank you. Will be a little quicker.
Okay, welcome back.
Yep.
Is there a quick round of sharing of how you already spoke up against sexism at work? Have you had good experiences or bad experiences that you would like to share? Maybe a couple, and then we move on with Bettina's presentation. A comment from before from Anne-Catherine. She says that some things we just accept as normal, but they are not. And so if we hear that from others, we can also become better allies in calling others out. And also in the group where I peeked in to listen, it was shared that by listening and sharing the stories, we do not feel alone. And so we know that others are facing similar situations, and by sharing it, it can become a little bit easier to react.
Yes, because very often you just think you are the crazy one.
Exactly.
It's the favorite tool of narcissists and psychopaths to gaslight you and say, oh, but it's not my problem. You are oversensitive. You don't have a sense of humor. And in my group, we had a very interesting case of a boss who was always rolling his eyes and making disrespectful non-verbal communication whenever the women said something. And we were reflecting if it's a good idea to then speak up to that boss as a group, which might be even more threatening for him. And I just learned a good technique. What you can do is, sorry, always separate, but that's a basic in giving feedback, always separate the person from the behavior and just say, not start with your interpretation and your judgment. I feel that you are making fun of us when we speak, but just say, I noticed that you roll your eyes a lot when we speak. So just the behavior, yeah. And maybe do you have a problem with your eyes? Maybe it's that. And then he has to explain himself, and that might be a little bit then. At least he realized it, because maybe it's just unconscious and it might already stop. Although in this case, in our group, that didn't stop it. But yeah.
Okay. One more comment, or shall we move on? I don't see any comments in the chat. No hand raised. So Bettina, over to you. I think we can continue.
Okay, yeah. Very good. So let me get back to my presentation. So the final move in becoming internal the gender equality fighter is find ways where in your little corner of the organization you have influence. So look at your circle of influence through the gender lens. So that's why I have this camera there, because you can put on your lens and see, so what can I do in HR, what can I do in communications and partnerships, in project management, in compliance. And I have a tool for this for you, and Marilena shared with me that at FAO you already have something like this when you plan projects, that you look at these kind of questions, the NAPRI wheel. So what are the needs? Does the product, service, or management, or whatever you're planning meet the needs of women? Do women have equal access? Were female voices involved in the design? do women receive equal resources, and what is the impact on women? And you can, these are 5 simple questions you can ask yourself on everything you do in your circle of influence and see what you can do about it. Yeah, so and unfortunately, and that's what it's often it's hard to see it. So recently I had the director of a museum, of the Red Cross Museum in Geneva, and he just had a big project on making his museum more feminine, because all institutions are built on the male default. And I was surprised, because I've never thought about museums and also being a male world. I mean, you look at the pictures, or look at the expositions that are in there, the people who work there. So it's all built around men. And there's an interesting book, I think it's a couple of years ago, from Caroline Criado Perez, and she also collected tons of statistics and fun, well, usually not so fun facts, like that female pianists have a 50% higher chance of suffering from hand injuries, because the piano panels are made for male hands that are just bigger, and so you have to strain your hands like crazy, and then you get tendinitis. So that's incredible, and it's also a loss to producers, because they could come up with a completely new line of pianos for female pianists. So it's actually quite stupid. Or we've seen this also with the pandemic, that drug testing is mostly done on male animals, and that's where we end up with doses and effects on the female body that are just not considered in the scientific test for the drugs, which is also incredible. We have a 70% higher chance of dying in car crashes, because the whole car, from the safety belt to the distances to everything, is built around males, because also the crash test dummies are male and they are quite expensive, so they kind of cut costs by having only one model. And of course, most engineer teams are only male, so they don't even think about these things. It's a blind spot for them. Or all kinds of products like protective equipment for policemen and women are not designed for the female women. So you have very uncomfortable police women who wear these protective equipment that's just not made for their body. So but that's also a big chance for organizations, because you can, if you create inclusive design, you have a whole new market and a whole new level of innovation that's just lying unused on the table. So we can come up with all kinds of ideas, and we will do a breakout room to see if you have any ideas for your organizations here. So this huge lot of opportunity, that's not only because it's unfair, it's only such a waste of everything. And female clients are powerful. Here, if you are German, you know this guy. This is Herr Kaiser. He was the public face of an insurance representative in the 70s in Germany, and it kept in the heads of everybody that if you buy an insurance, you have this middle-aged white guy who explains what kind of insurances you need. But that isn't smart anymore, because more and more insurances are bought by women, and women, because of their biography, because they have children, they have different kind of careers, they have completely different needs for insurances, and this is not something a middle-aged male guy can understand. And I've been working with a couple with insurance last year, and they're struggling here to change this. So inclusive design would bring so much more success to organizations. And now let's see how you can bring this kind of success to your organization. So here the questions we came up with: how diverse is your team? What you can do to improve the diversity in your team, or make the work environment more women friendly?
Okay, thank you very much, Bettina. I think this round we'll do a little bit shorter, 5 minutes. and I will create the breakout groups. The question is, how diverse is your team? And what can you do to improve the diversity in your team if it's not diverse yet? Is there something that you can do or consider suggesting, for example, to your boss or to your organization? So I will recreate 5 groups and off we go for 5 minutes.
So here we are again. I'm curious to hear from you.
Is there anything that you were able to do in order to increase the diversity in your team? Or is the team what it is and there is nothing that you can do about it? Erin.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. And hi, Bettina. Thank you so much for this session and for the organizers. I apologize that I joined late, but really grateful for this session. In our small group, we were talking about my team. It is to some extent diverse, but we were saying, actually, even beyond my team, beyond my agency, to try to create more equal opportunities for people. Like if we're talking about young professionals, especially, which could be interns, junior professional officers, which are funded by specific governments, usually funding their own nationals, but some of them have opened it up to nationals from, low and middle income countries. And we were saying, like, if UN-wide, we could have more equality of opportunity so that it's not just somebody who's rich enough to live in New York or Geneva on less than a living wage as an intern could benefit. And just an interesting example that came up this week, I was asked to review a concept note for an HIV assessment in a particular country. And I looked and I said, please correct me if I'm wrong, my colleague, but it looks like the technical advisory committee is all men. And if that's the case, it's not acceptable. And we need to have women and young people and, people of diverse sexual identity, etc. So just a few examples to share there. And thank you again so much for this really valuable session.
Thank you very much, Erin, for sharing your experience. Over to you, Bettina. We have 10 more minutes.
Okay. And we still have something very important to do to make this whole experience stick. So now we have covered all the 3 strategies, and now it's time to do our pledge. And I invite you to say the pledge with me. So hands on your heart, other hand up, and we can say this together if you want to. You're not forced to, but I will just do it. So we have some drama and emotional remembering. We always remember stuff better if you have some emotions coming up. So let's do the AAA pledge on allyship, activism, and actor. I will be an ally for other women by sharing my learnings and speaking up for them. I will not accept the unacceptable and call out everyday sexism. I will take action and push for organizational change wherever I can. Yeah, keep the hand. So Marilena, have you done the screenshot for this magic and very important?
Yeah, not quite. Well, I have done one, but I can see a few ladies who are hiding behind the cameras. So I'll just give 2 seconds.
Important moment.
2 seconds to everyone to turn on their camera if they can. And then I will take the picture so that we are on camera. Yeah. And that would be lovely. I can see a few more faces. Great. And I will have to take it with my left because otherwise I can't.
Yeah, you can't.
Pledging, right? Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Taken. Let me just double check.
Wonderful. Okay, and we have another surprise for you. You will receive a certificate for being part of this new sisterhood of the AAA Pledge for Gender Equality and Diversity. Marilena will send you this wonderful document where you just only need to pop in your name, and you have the repetition of your pledge and the certificate signature of me. And then you can print it out and hang it in your office or on your refrigerator or share it on social media, whatever. So you have a constant reminder that you are now part of the sacred sisterhood of the AAA pledge forever. And yeah, you can use it as a communication starter. If somebody sees it, you can share it with other women and remember this workshop better. Yes. So otherwise, please stay in touch. You find me on LinkedIn most of the time, and you find also the link here for the LinkedIn group, where I also share my experience, and other women can join. It would be great if you would be more there, and you always find interesting stuff also on my website. So ladies, this has been again a big pleasure working with you and seeing your perspective and hearing your stories. And this is my mission at the moment, kind of changing things one story and one conversation at a time. So please go out there and share your stories and have lots of communication Aikido conversations with men and women, so we finally get out of this nice girl strategy and create some real positive change. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bettina. A round of applause for you, for having brought some very concrete examples to us and for allowing us to inspire our discussions and our sharing, which is the main purpose of the Women's Informal Network, to have a safe space where we can share amongst ourselves, get to know each other. So we still have 6 minutes, and therefore I would like to share a few news, and also what we have introduced in our meetings and workshops is a moment to share your ask. What is it that you would like to achieve? What is it that you would like to put out into the world and get feedback on or help on? Or, you know, this is the network. We are supposed to support each other and help each other. So what is it that you're looking for? How can we support you? This is one thing. You can either put it in the chat or you can raise your hand. I can see you, Erin. Then a few announcements. We have kicked off again, not only with this virtual event, but also our face-to-face events. So for the Rome-based friends and colleagues, we are going to have next week, Monday, a lunch close to IFAD. And next week, Thursday evening, an aperitivo close to FAO. So those are 2 occasions where we can network in person. And there will be also on Monday afternoon, Rome time, 5:30, a very important event organized by our colleague Daniela from the WIN New York on abuse and sexual harassment and violence against women. So if you have not received the invitation, please let Chitra or myself know so that we can forward the invitations. And now over to Erin. You have your hand raised. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks so much, Marilena. Just wanted to briefly say, and maybe this came up in the session already, but a few other issues that I think the WIN network and each of us in our respective agencies have been trying to break the silence on. The issue of sexual harassment, abuse of power. I know we have this session next week. Unfortunately, I have a lot of experience with trying to really bring that out and just even talk about it in the workplace. And maybe we can talk more about that, or if colleagues are aware of issues, just to encourage people to reach out to one of us, and there is help available. Also, the issue of menopause and perimenopause, and the issue of burnout among women, what I call the silent epidemic of burnout among women in the UN. So just raising those, and maybe for future discussions, and Chitra and Marilena, maybe we can do another joint global WIN event on that, and taking the opportunity to thank you, Chitra and Marilena, so much for your leadership of this group, and again, Bettina, for this very appreciated session. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Erin, for always being proactive and coming with proposals for topics, which is very good. There was actually a very interesting event. Maybe you can find the recording or we can share it about menopause, and with some very insightful data also, and toolkits and help support, etc. So definitely we need to raise awareness about it and not have it as a taboo topic. So, and I will most likely organize a WIN event around menopause, because in the new book of You Matter, How Women Are Reclaiming Their Power, we have a new chapter of a lady who also wrote about menopause. So we will have something. I can see in the comments that Maine had an ask. Maine, would you like to share your ask with us? We cannot hear you. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I was muted. It always happens. Yes, as Chitra mentioned, we were, I'm leading a team from the World Food Program Innovation Challenge, and we won some funding. We were awarded some funding to develop an application to address the issue of sexual harassment. We are a bit behind time and budget at this point, but the idea of this is that we would develop an application to report incidents of sexual harassment in the organization, and we are going to pilot this application in Panama and Peru. The first step of this project is to hire a behavioral insights firm, and this firm will be developing a research to see what are the barriers and the motivations to report sexual harassment in the organization. And probably I would reach out for volunteers when we have more a more clear expectation on the dates and the demand it would require, because they are the consultant firm will be doing one-on-one interviews, maybe 45 minutes each. And it would be great to have some volunteers, because you have been in these organizations, you know how things work, and it would be great to have input from different colleagues. Thanks so much.
Very interesting, Maine, very interesting initiative. Actually, in FAO, we do have a very active gender focal point network, and we have in Latin America some very active gender focal points who, because you mentioned the countries being Panama and Peru, who might be wanting to act as volunteers for the research and answer the questionnaires, and also the language barrier may be there. So if it's not going to be in English, they could do it in Spanish. So it's
that would be great.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so we have reached the 2 hours. Thank you so much. And so like Erin was doing, come up with proposals, send Chitra or me your proposals. If you would like to do a talk, if you know an interesting woman leader or someone who may be speaking to us or having a workshop like Bettina did today, we are always keen to hear from you. And I hope that we can see each other in person or very soon in one of the next webinars. And just as a reminder, if after today, you're going to continue to think about what we have discussed, and more short phrases or data comes to your mind, please share it again with Chitra and with me. And I have the chat, so I will summarize, and I will put some of the phrases or the strategies into our Slack channel, the dedicated Slack channel, so that we can capture these very useful strategies that Bettina shared, but also that you all shared. And with this, I think, I don't know, Chitra, would you like to close or add anything?
No, just to say thank you. And it's great to see you all. I think we've been trying, just to share, we've been trying in the post-COVID to do more in person, but that has its challenges as well. So we're trying to, I think we're all navigating hybrid. And so we're doing more and more of that. But I really do miss seeing all of you who aren't in Rome, you know, because we developed such a great community over COVID in particular. So really, really great to see you all. So I think we definitely have to have a good balance between our virtual global meetings and our in-person. So just to say, and have a great evening, and looking forward to seeing you all next time. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. And someone has asked whether we can share Bettina's presentation. Bettina, I believe we can share your presentation because some of the members were interested in your LinkedIn community link, etc. So definitely we will be sharing also, as Bettina mentioned, the certificate, because you are a member of the allyship of the AAA.
Yeah.
And Marilena, we'll post it on our YouTube channel now, the recording.
Yes, we will post it
great.
on the YouTube channel, and the picture, if we have the agreement, we would put it on our Facebook page, which is a restricted access group for WIN members only.
Great.
Okay, thank you very much, and goodbye. Hope to see you
Bye.
soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.